Okay, well, what I'm going to show you guys right now, I have my open and I have, I'm going to go ahead and group these elements right here. I'm going to center my pivot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a ground plane and I'm going to show you guys how to produce a render. Okay, let me go ahead and, there we go. Oops. So I'm going to go ahead and take my rocket here. So imagine this is my finished rocket with chair and everything. I'm just using this as a sample for you guys. Okay. You'll notice up here on the top of the menu bar, I have some frames that look like a old school movie action gate. Okay. If I hold my mouse over those, okay, they will light up. So all the newbies in the class, make sure you're listening to this. Yeah, because I don't want to repeat it like 4 times. So it's easier to see it once, okay? If I click on this icon right here, it'll say display render settings there. And if I click this open, okay, it actually gives me a set of render settings. The reason why these are important is that I can adjust these settings to make a render. So what is a render? A render is when I hit this next one over here, okay, this third icon right here, it renders the current frame. This one right here, it has in really small print IPR in it. And IPR is actually for something a little bit later for doing lighting and texturing. It's a live action window that opens up and gives you a constant feed of what something looks like. So we're not going to use that for quite a while. Right now we're going to stick on these 2 icons right here. The render settings, okay, which they used to call the global settings. And if we come in here, what we can find out is what software we're using. We have a common tab that has common basic information. This incorporates what size file that we're using, what do we want our image format to be. For most of our files, we're probably going to be rendering out TIFFs or JPEGs, sometimes PSDs in Photoshop. So I would make that option selection there. And if I scroll down here a little bit more, I can also tell it what camera I want to render from. We're going to be using perspective for the majority of our renders, but most importantly for us is going to be the image size that we're rendering. Okay. We're going to want to come over here and adjust this image size, and we're going to want to move this down to 720 to do our test renders. And then when we render out something for class, we want to adjust that to the HD 1080 setting. Okay. You'll also notice underneath here is the resolution size. Okay. This is huge because right now this is set at 72 dpi. So if I want to render something and I'm going to print it in a book, okay, print settings for professional print is 300 dpi. Okay, so if I'm going to render something to put it up on the wall for presentation, it'd be in my best interest to probably render my file at let's say 150 or maybe 200 dpi. It's going to be a lot. Oops, I don't know how that happened. I bumped my box. Hopefully I didn't do anything. That was my foot. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to adjust this right now to about 150 dpi. Okay, and I have this 720 set. Now I'm going to come in here and real quick. I'm going to click this render icon. I'm going to show you what's going to happen. Maya's going to come in here and it's going to do a render of my location really quick. Okay, and so it just goes through there with the standard Maya software and it creates this really fast render. So look at what happens if I come up here and I come up on the side of my vehicle. And if I hit render right now, Maya software is going to give me that side view. Okay. Now Maya software, it's just a real base rendering software that comes with it. What we're going to be using is one of the mental ray options. So if I come back here and I click that tab, that's where I make all my adjustments. And I have my, right here, it indicates my render layer, which is my master layer. We're not going to change that. But underneath it here, it says render using. I have Maya software selected right now. I'm going to scroll down here and select mental ray automatically. Okay. And now if I come over here and render, you might not notice it right now, but mental ray is going to take a little bit longer and it tends to have some more finite detail inside it. Okay. Within mental ray, I have some wonderful pre-established options for rendering. And I'm going to show this to you right now. Okay. One of those options is called indirect lighting. So if I touch on indirect lighting right here, and I come over here, under physical sun and sky, I can hit create. And what it's going to do, it's going to create a series of arrows down here. Okay, these arrows actually represent natural light. And so if I come over here now and click render, look at what happens inside my render view. A lot has changed. it's given me the preset here for physical sun and sky has given me what it would an exact render of my light direction coming down at about 12 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon right now. So if I come over here and I grab these light arrows, and if I turn them this way, what time would the sun be coming in? About that time would be about 8, maybe 9 in the morning. So if I click render again and I take a look at it, okay, you notice the haze changes, the lights change, everything is modified. If I come back over and I grab those arrows again and I move them this way, turn them to the side, and if I hit render again, okay, I have a much softer look now, and I have my light coming in at this particular direction. Okay, so these arrows have a lot to do with the light and the feel that I'm going to have on my particular prop. I tend to just have something lit about here. It's not the boring software Maya renderer, but I can make decisions that can enhance my composition. I can decide that maybe I want to have my light face a little bit this way, so when I come back here, okay, I can have light casting off. Now, let's say I'm right here and I want to get back really quick to that previous view I had. On my keyboard, I have the bracket keys, okay, not the parentheses, but the brackets, which are located right under the plus and minus. Watch what happens if I hit my bracket keys. Okay, Maya remembers my last series of steps, and if I hit the bracket keys, it'll take me right back. So if I have to quickly go out and adjust my light, then I hit the bracket keys, I can go right back to the angle that I had. And now if I come in here and click render, since I adjusted my light a little bit, and this is pretty much exactly what I wanted, look at where my shadow is. It's right under the object. I have the light coming down and hitting my object. And so I can go in here and I can manipulate the light and try to get the best light read possible. Okay. If I feel like it's getting too bright on my object, what I can do is pull the light off a little bit to the side and change the angle of it, go back in and render it. Now you'll notice right here I have this blue sky right here. Maya doesn't know what my eyes see automatically every day. Maya at this point doesn't know exactly where the horizon line is. So I could go in and I could drop the horizon line and have that blue come down, so I won't have this empty gray line or space right in between the horizon and the base plate. Okay, so you see why I created that base plate right there? Okay, if I come over here, I take this ground plane and I hide it, and I click render right now, I'm not going to have a ground plane inside my set. The reason why I like having a ground plane in there is it creates that wonderful little shadow. And what's a great thing about shadows? Shadows make objects feel like they're anchored down to the ground. Okay, they make them feel realistic. Okay, so if I come back here and say display show all, because what I did to hide my ground plane, I just touched it, and I actually end up displaying some other geometry that I didn't want to, so I'm just going to touch these really quick and hit Control H, hide them. Okay, so if I come back here right now and if I click render again, you'll see I get that nice little ground shadow that's appearing up there. Okay, there it is. And so what I like to do is, for this class, what we're going to do is you want to sort of lock up on your particular model, and we want to come in here and let me hide these two. Give me a second here. Let me get these. These are my building parts. I'm going to hide those out of the way. So I'm going to get my camera set up on the angle that I like. Okay. Now, what can be confusing is sometimes I might be zoomed in or zoomed out. I might not have the right angle. There's a way that I can have a view. I can bring up a little preview window that tells me what Maya is going to be rendering. To do that, it's really simple. I just go under View right here, and I drop down under Camera Settings. Okay, and I'm going to drop down to Resolution Gate right here. Do you see that? So I'll leave it open for a second. In my OpenGL view that I'm looking at, in my perspective view, I hit View, Camera Settings, Resolution Gate. By clicking on Resolution Gate, it'll give me a pre-established window of what I'm going to be seeing in my render. So this is very helpful for me. I prefer not to work with this on, so I turn it back off. I find it gives me a headache in my peripheral vision when I could see 20% opacity through the sides right here. So I tend to only turn this on when I'm about to go do a render. This way I can sort of line up on my object that I want, And I'm going to go ahead and line up on this object about here. I'm going to take the object, I'm going to drop it down to about the ground right there. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it at a 3/4 view. Okay. This is going to be a lot more interesting to my viewer to get to see my object at a 3/4. And what I like to, in art, a lot of times when we're doing orthographic views or we're doing drawings, we call this a front 3/4 view. So obviously this would be a side view. Okay. This is a front view. I don't really get much from that front, but when I combine the front and the 3/4 together, I get a lot. I'm going to sort of pull this into position right here. Okay, get an angle locked up in here. I'm going to hit render really quick. And then I'm going to get this nice view and this nice render of my image here. Now what you guys are going to be doing, you're required, you were supposed to do 3 chairs. Those were supposed to be completed and finished by last week. Now I want you to go in, make the rocket engine components, duplicate those and attach those on to 3 of your different chairs and come up with 3 different versions. You know, it's up to you. If you want to use the same chair in all 3 of them and have some variations of the rocket, that's just fine. Just try to make them all look different. Okay. Now you'll notice here, I'm going to go over about how to adjust that blue setting really quick. But before I do that, notice this little part here on my plane that gets pinched right here. You see that? See how this corner comes up to here? And then the other corner comes up to there. I'm going to fix that really quick, and that's super easy. I'm just going to touch my ground plane. I'm going to go to scale, and I'm going to scale it out so it's completely flat underneath there. Okay, so now when I go to render, I'll have one flat line that's right underneath. Okay, so let's do a quick render again. Let's take a look at our object. So this render is appearing in what we call the render view window. Okay. This is important to us because after we do a render, okay, we can temporarily save it right here, okay? Or if we really like the view that we have right now, I could come under File, and I could go to Save Image, and I could save it to my desktop. I could label this, and I could call it Front 3/4 View, okay? I'm just going to call it Front View for right now, okay? And most importantly, it asks me what type of file. If I were to save it right now, I'm going to be out of luck. I need to go down here and I want to save it as a TIFF or a PSD. Okay, one of the problems I've encountered with saving in a couple different formats, Michael, maybe you can remind me or somebody else, is that when we save in PSD that it loses that blue background when we bring it into Photoshop? Yes, that's what I thought. Thank you. In PSD, when we save it, it'll lose the black background when we open it up. It does something weird in Photoshop. So to prevent that, we can save as TIFF. And for those of you that like, you can save as JPEG as well. I prefer TIFF. So I'm going to save as TIFF right now to my desktop. I've labeled it front view. And if I go look on my desktop, I would find that file right there. Okay. So now I have a lot of people, they do renders and they come up here and they're like, File, Save As, doesn't have an option to save it. You can only save from the render view. That's what's really important. Okay. So to adjust that blue sky setting in the back there, what I'm going to do, okay, is I'm going to come over here. I need to touch the arrows right here, okay, because I'm going to go to the attributes for that light. So when I touch those arrows, when I touch my object here, I have attributes up right now for that object. So to bring up my attributes, if I come over here and I touch those arrows, or I look in my outliner and I can find that sun direction right there, okay, I can double click on that so it's selected, hit Control A, and it brings up the attribute setting. If I come over and I find it's Maya Physical Sun and Sky, which is MIA right here, and I click on that, if I scroll down to that attribute, I will have a horizon height right here. If I come in here and if I type in -1, it's going to drop that blue horizon down 1 notch, -1. If I were to type in +3, it's going to raise it 3 steps. So I'm going to type in -1 here, come back and hit render, and see what happens. And it's going to drop that blue horizon down perfectly right there to the base plate, so I don't have that ugly gray section that's in there. Now I have a nice model right here to look at. Okay, this is how we're going to present our work. There's also another way to present our work. It's through what's called an occlusion render. I will show that to you in another video at another time of class when we have some more time. For right now, this is just fine for us. Okay? All right, and so What you guys are going to want to do is we're going to present our work in 11 by 17 format, which fits this HD window perfectly. Okay, and you can show all three of your chairs. So you can have two printouts. You're going to have one view showing me your three views at a front 3/4 of all three rockets. So I'm going to pretend right now, I'm going to zoom out here and pretend that these are three different rocket chairs. Okay, so what I'm going to do first, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn this. I'm going to come back here to my channel box really quick. Okay, and I'm going to turn this back to that 90-degree angle. I'm going to pretend this is, even though it's the same right now, this is chair 1. Okay, this is chair 2. I'm going to pretend this is chair 3 right here. So when I get down here to this angle, I need to make sure I can get all three of those in there. So I might have to scale back. If I have to scale back, I might have to come over and take my ground plane here. I might need to widen it up a little bit this way, bring it a little bit closer to me. And then I also might need to extend my ground plane off, so when I come in here and zoom in on my rockets, I have that nice ground plane. Once I get into about the angle that I want, I'm going to come in and I'm going to take each one of these and I'm going to turn them to get that front 3/4 view. Okay, like so. Once I get them turned, I'm going to grab my pivot points and I'm going to move my object. Now you'll notice when I go to move the object, what's it doing now? It's moving it back away from the camera, right? That's because I covered this once before with you. It's because the pivot point in the move option right now is set in the world. Okay? Actually, I believe it's set on the object settings. So what I'm going to do is double click on the move tool here, and if I come up here, it's set on object. So it's staying to object. If I rotate that object, the pivot will stay to it. This is a great example of when I want to come in and click world right now. And what it's going to do is, even though I rotated my object, it's going to allow me to move my object side to side, even though I've rotated it to the best angle that I can get here. So watch, if I come down in here, okay, I'm going to go ahead and close that option there, and I look up here. Okay, now when I touch an object, I can still rotate it to get it to fit in the best way. But when I go back to move, it allows me to slide it back and forth without it diminishing back in the Z-plane depth and changing any perspective there. Okay, you might decide to have one chair face this way. Oops, I didn't hold shift there. And hold shift. You might have one chair face towards me a little bit like this. And obviously this one can't really, if I were to put it dead center like this, I'm not going to see anything, so we don't want to do that. So perhaps you decide to have a little bit of a down shot like that. I prefer having all the chairs look in the same direction, even at the same angle. Okay, that's really easy to establish. You can just eyeball it, or you could come up here and you could check the angle of rotation inside the channel box. Okay, I'm now going to slide this one over, slide this guy over about so. I don't want to have a tangency. A tangency is when that guy's overlapping that. You see that? I don't want that tangency. It looks like crap when I render it. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to get scaled up on my objects right here. And then when I'm all ready, I'm going to come up and hit render. It's going to take a little bit longer now because now I have 3 chairs in there. But these machines should crunch it pretty fast. And there, now I have a render of my 3 rocket chairs. So I would go under File in my render view here, Save As, okay, and I would place it in there. You know what I noticed they changed in here? 1 second here. Need to figure this out. I noticed they changed the save option, so I'll come back into that later and figure out what they did with it. There it is. They just changed the key. Before they had an arrow going into a box, meaning to save. I have this real cool function here where I could temporarily save this image in my render view window. And then I could go back later and save the ones I like. To do that, if I come up here, even though they took out the old box with the arrow, if I hold my image over the larger image here, it says Keep Image. So if I hit Keep Image now, I've temporarily saved that window right there. So now I'm going to close it. Now I'm going to come down in here. I might say, you know what would it look like if I did a 3/4 shot like that on my rocket chairs? Would that be better for my presentation? Okay. We're going to pretend I'm the art director. You're presenting your projects to me. Presentation could be everything. So that's why we don't want to have things being any tangencies or clipped off or coming off screen. Now you'll notice what happened in here when I changed my 3/4 down shot. I lost my blue sky because now I'm looking down on it. So if I want to get my blue sky back in this image, I need to go back and I need to adjust those settings. To adjust those settings again, I come over here and I touch the light. I hit Control A. I bring up the attributes, my physical sun and sky. I scroll down. I find that horizon line setting right there, which is at -1. I would type in maybe -5 right now, hit return, come back, hit render, and then it'll drop that blue further down, like that. Okay? So front 3/4 down shot like this tends to be the common display angle for most prop and product design elements, okay? And most elements design, especially whether it's automotive, anything related to industrial or product design, okay? Why? Because we can see 3 sides to it. I don't mind if you show me the other angle. Now watch, I'm going to keep this image here. Come up, hit that little icon there, keep image. And then when I come back here, see my slider down here? That was my initial render. There's my other render. See that? It allows me to go back and see which image that I like. And then if I like this image, I just go under File, Save Image As, and go and follow the appropriate steps and save it as a TIFF or a JPEG or a PSD, and I'm done. Okay. Again, when I save it as a PSD and I open it in Photoshop, let's go ahead and do that, and I'll show you what happens. Save image here. Go to Desktop. I'm going to call this Front View 2. I'm going to go ahead and save this option as a PSD and hit Save. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to come back here. I'm going to do I'm going to do a reverse shot on my vehicles right now. What do I need to do? I can come in here. I touch each vehicle. I'm going to rotate it to a rear 3/4 shot. Rotate this one as well. Okay, I'm just going to eyeball it right now. I'm not going to go up and get really specific in the channel box editor. I might have to reframe because I've changed some compositional elements with the big thrusters coming in the back. Once I have that in position, I come up and hit render again. Now, I was doing my render in a test render to get prepared. When I'm ready to do my final render, I was doing these. If I scroll down under my render settings, go back to common. Common is like my general adjustments. I'm still at 720. Okay, I'm going to come under here and I'm going to drop this down and I'm going to put it on HD 1080. Widescreen HD, same format, just a little bit wider when I'm all ready. And I'm even going to come here under my resolution and preset my resolution back down to 72. So I'm going to go down here and type in 150 or 200 DPI. Hit close. Hit render right now. And you can look at the size difference now. See that? It's going to take a little bit more time because Maya has to crunch more. And there's my render. But you'll notice the size difference. Much bigger. Okay? Okay? Come back under File, Save As, and save it accordingly. Okay? If I wanted to keep that image, I can hit the Keep option here. Let me go ahead and frame this up so I can look at that render, compare to that render, compare to that render. And I can decide which one that I like the best. I might be altering the sun. I might be moving it around. Okay? Now, really quickly, that's the render settings. We've talked about common, how we need to go in here. We need to adjust, first of all, this to mental ray from Maya software. The next thing we need to do is we had to come down here. We had to tell it what size. Okay. We also needed to make sure we're telling it what image format. Sometimes I find that the image format doesn't correctly hook up. Even though I render it, the benefit of me telling it right now that if I wanted it to be a TIFF or PSD, you'll notice when I went to save it after I rendered it, it gave me that option again. The purpose of this is if I was doing a batch render on my computer, which I'll show you at another time, then it would batch render and it would save it as the file format that I've indicated here. Okay, so in that case, I'm not worrying about that. So I could put this to anything, and when I go if I put it at Targa, and then if I hit close and hit render again, okay, I'm still going to give me the option to save the file as what I want to save it as. Okay. If I want to get out of a render at any time, I hit escape on my keyboard. Hit it once, it should stop the render. Tells the computer. There. So now if I come under File, Save Image, I still have the option to adjust whatever I want it to be right down here. And I have a huge list of options. Okay? So, sorry guys, it's a little loud. Turn that down. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close out of that. Don't make the mistake of double tapping your close window, because sometimes your close window is right on top of that other window. Okay, try to avoid that. So Let me come back here. Let me just take a quick walk through, make sure you haven't missed anything here. I have my common set. One other option here, we talked about how to create the indirect lighting, right? In the beginning, we came down here, went to indirect lighting, and then we hit create, right? If I had to delete it now, it's quite common that sometimes there's problems where it doesn't work. If there's a problem where it doesn't work, students come in all the time to the outliner, they select it, and they hit delete. They think it's gone. It is gone from the outliner, but there's still a node and there's some history attached to it. What I need to do is I need to come in here and I need to go over back to that window in my render settings. And if I click this open, go to indirect lighting, I need to hit delete. Then now it's officially deleted from my scene. I come back and hit create again. Hit create under indirect lighting. And where's my light going to be? I might have to go to see-through mode. It's right there in the center of my grid. If I touch the light, I can grab it. I can pull it up. I like to scale it and have it in my scene so I don't constantly have to be moving around, and I can make adjustments from looking at one angle. Okay? And now I can come in here and basically render out my rocket engines. Okay? Let's come back here really quick. Let me double check before I finish off this lecture. I want to make sure there's nothing else that, oh yeah, under quality sections here, you have a couple options that you can do. Okay, if you come down here on your final render, excuse me, it's been a long day, and if I click production right here, it's going to make it much more sort of defined. It's going to add a couple little elements in there. I don't do that under normal render procedures because it eats up more time. So I'm going to come down here. I like to select production. Okay, if I come back in here, close this window, this quality setting, and if I hit render, it should probably take me a little bit more time now because it's at a production setting. So it's going to render it a little bit more fine. Ah, would you look at that? Something weird is going on here. I've lost my blue sky. So let's go take a look at what's happened. Hopefully this won't happen with you guys here. Maybe it's because I deleted my original light, so I'm going to delete this guy here and then come back under here. Let me make sure that there's no other light settings in there. Delete this light, close, and I'm going to hit render and see what happens. There, it's back to Maya software. Something weird happened when I had created that new light. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is bring this back open, come back under indirect lighting. I wonder if that was an adjustment from the production. Maybe that's something new they put inside Maya 2013 because they're always changing. Oh, you know what? I know what it is. I'm looking at a down shot and I created a new light and I haven't adjusted my horizon line on it. That just hit me. So again, if I come back here, take my new light, and I also didn't check to see what angle my light was casting at. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn from here, have it right over my objects, hit my bracket keys to get back to my render angle that I had. Okay, I'm going to scale up my light right now. What I'm going to do then, since I have my light selected, if I didn't have attributes up, I hit Control A, it brings up the attribute window. I go to Maya Physical Sun and Sky. I'm going to come down here to horizon height, and I'm going to type in -4. Last time I did it at -5. So let's do -5 again. Hit return, and if I hit render here, hopefully I shouldn't have any issues right here. It should give me back my natural. There it is. I could already see it in that little square. I have my blue sky. And so what happened there, I had those dark shadows because I was basically looking down into what Maya considers night because I'm way under the horizon. Okay? Still rendering. Taking a little bit more time. Okay? There. Took a little bit more time under production there. Made it a little bit tighter. So there, that would be my display for my rockets. You don't have to label them or anything else. I just ask you guys to print everything out on 11 by 17 paper. Okay? And as far as printing goes, let's go ahead and pull one of these up really quick. Okay? Some of you don't know Photoshop, so I'm going to see if I can walk you through this really fast here. Okay? Let me grab my front view here that's in Photoshop here. I'm going to drag it and drop it on top of Photoshop. Okay? Look what happens. Where's my blue background? Thanks, Photoshop. I don't know why it does this. It's some vector reading halftone thing, it disappears. The blue background is gone. Okay, so if I close this and come back in here, I'm going to find the image that I saved as, my desktop's getting dirty here. Let me find the TIFF file. There it is, front view TIFF. And if I grab this and drag this and bring this on, voila, my beautiful blue background is there. Okay, it's because I saved that as a TIFF. So that could be in your benefit. When I work sometimes and I'm going to do a paint over in Maya for a client where they ask me to model a set and I'm going to paint over in Photoshop, I save it as a PSD and I bring it up in Photoshop because I still get the nice crisp lighting on there, but the background's gone. Now I can just paint in the sky and start painting on the object, and that's how I can pull off what we call paint overs, okay, where you're working in SketchUp or Maya painting over an object. So now that I have this done in Photoshop, you don't have to know much but this, okay? If you want to make an adjustment in here, if it prints out too dark or too light, you have to go to levels. First thing we have to do is double click on the layer option, take off the lock. If I hit Control L, it brings me to levels. I can grab from the middle and I can darken my object or I can lighten my object. Okay? If I darken it to where I want it, for some reason my printer's printing lighter, or maybe my render is a little darker and I need it to lighten it up. Printers tend to print 10 to 20% darker. So sometimes I open this up and maybe lighten it up just a teeny bit. We should be just fine because our image is pretty bright here. They should print out perfectly. When I'm done, I go down under File. Okay, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go. Now, these machines here I have a work order right here. I'm waiting for my hookup to the printers. These machines in this room aren't hooked up to the printers. Those other machines should be. So if I were to go to print right now, I don't think they fixed it. There's an error. There's no open printer. If once I have it hooked up, it would automatically read that I have a hookup to the printers and I could send it to the color printer in there. I'll go over that with you in just a second. Okay, so that's it. That covers our rendering options. I'm going to close Photoshop right here. Okay, go back, take a look at Maya really quick. What I like to do to save myself time is when I'm all done setting up my light and everything, I like to go in and I like to save my file as, save scene as, and let's say it was, I'll call it chair finished, and then at the end I put render, because that reminds me that's my file with the light all prepped with the camera angle ready to go, hit a button and it's done. So that way if you get home and you realize, oh, I crinkled up my printout or something didn't go right, you don't have to go back, create the light, and do all those steps again. You just come back in and you open up the file that says render on the end of it and you're good to go. Okay, so make sure you save your file as that as a little bit of a backup. If I want to get rid of that window right in there, I go back to View and I take off. I go back to, where was I there? View and Camera Settings, and I take off Resolution Gate. Undo it. Oh, didn't do it there. Let's try again.
No gate.
No gate, thank you. Must hit the one above it. There it goes. Now I'm back to sort of my free modeling mode. Okay? That's all you really need to know. All right?